It is 6:20. Do we have enough people to get started? I think so.
You do, Adrian. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 of 10 sitting board members. So yes, you do have a quorum.
Okay. So I'll call the meeting.
Adrian, can you hold? I just want to start recording. Bear with me a moment, please.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
So I'll ask you to re-say the, I want to record.
We are calling. What? You're done? Oh, no. It's on. Okay. Thank you. We're calling this meeting to order at 6:21. If I could have approval of the agenda, that would be lovely. Thanks, BJ. Second. Thank you, Asha. Any question on the agenda? Nope. In that case, I'll call a question. All in favor, please say aye. Raise hands. Okay, thank you very much. I don't believe we have any public input, and there was nobody on this list, you said. So we have a disciplinary or dismissal action against a public officer or employee on the slate. So I am requesting a motion to enter executive session for that reason. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Len. Len seconded, Ann. Any question or discussion? Nope. Okay, then we will vote to enter executive session. Please raise your hand in favor. Okey doke. We're in executive session. Dave, do whatever you need to do.
Yes, so board members and public, this meeting will remain open and will stay here with this meeting. But board members and Tyler and Jen, I have sent you a separate link for the executive session. So if you check your email, you should have that link, and we'll see you there momentarily. Please make sure you leave this meeting, and we'll rejoin it later when we come back out of executive.
At 7:10. I'm very sorry we're late. We were in an executive session and special meeting that was scheduled prior to this, and we needed to finish up. I apologize very much for making everybody wait, but we will move forward. So I would like to have an approval of agenda, please.
Adrian, I think you have 2 changes that you...
right. Did we do that before we approve it? I thought that would be part of the discussion. I'm sorry.
Fair.
I didn't understand. First, I guess, are there any changes to the agenda? And we'll handle it that way. Maria?
Yes, I would like to request an addition to the agenda to add the vote on the replacement of George Ambrose.
And including the discussion?
Including the discussion on that before the other legal business section, just because it has been warned. It didn't officially get warned. It didn't make it onto the agenda, but we have, I feel like it's been public knowledge that this is coming up, and that various groups have been informed that this is coming. So does anyone have any?
We'll talk about that
in discussion
when we approve the agenda. But I think it was between versions of the agenda, it got dropped, and I got noticed today, unfortunately, and not sooner than that. So is there another addition? I saw Len's hand up.
Yep. Under personnel, where it talks about personnel action, I would like to put in there that we need personnel action regarding teacher Jennifer Little.
Okay, thank you. Then I guess we will have a discussion on those 2 additions and the agenda in general. Does anyone have any comments or statements to that effect? Seeing no one's hands, I will call for a vote. All in favor of adopting the agenda with those 2 agenda additions, please raise your hand. Okay, thank you. That measure changed. Are there any, is anyone voting in a negative? I can't see everybody. And is there anyone that's abstaining?
Adrian, this is Dave. Can I just ask a question very quickly?
Sure.
I just want to check with Brian Hill and make sure that we've got our YouTube feed up and live. Brian, are we all squared away with YouTube?
Good catch.
He's just sent me a message, yes. So thank you. Just wanted to ask that question.
Okay, so the agenda has been approved, and we will move on to approval of minutes of 3/17/21. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Point of order. Point of order.
Yes,
Before you
Bruce.
approve minutes, you have to ask for additions and corrections to the minutes. Then you approve the minutes. Otherwise, we'd be approving them twice.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. Does anyone have any changes to make to these 3/17 minutes prior to approval? Seeing no hands, could I have a motion to approve the minutes of 3/17/21, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you, BJ. Is there any discussion of the minutes? Seeing none, could you please raise your hand if you approve of those minutes? 3, 4, 5. Is there anyone not approving of the minutes? No. Any abstentions? No. Okay. Are there any changes to be suggested or additions to 3/23/21? The minutes to 3/23/21. Okay, seeing none, could I have a motion to adopt those minutes or approve those minutes, please?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second? Thank you, Sam. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes? Any nays? Any abstentions? Okay, the minutes of 3/23 are also approved. We are moving into the public input. I believe we have one person trying that will be giving us a public comments. Mr. Do you pronounce your name Lee or Lee? I think you may be muted.
Adrian, while Mr. Lay is unmuted, we actually have two people. We have
Okay,
Richard
somebody
Lay,
else joined? Okay,
Richard Lay and Kathy Luzader, but
Okay.
Mr. Lay is up first.
okay, sorry, Kathy.
Yes, it's Richard Lee, and I've been a lifelong resident of Vermont and a resident of Clarendon for quite some time now. And these are remarks being made in general, because I don't like to butt my nose in, but these are things I've observed. And I'm going to read it so I don't miss anything. So good evening to everyone. We all know the cost of education is a heavy burden for taxpayers. It's concerning that Mill River ranks very low in Vermont school districts. Teachers must expend every moment educating our children with information necessary to their success. BLM is a Marxist movement. A BLM flag should never fly on our American schools. We do not pay taxes to promote a political agenda. Wokeism is destroying America. Nobody is perfect, not our police, our teachers, our country, but this is unacceptable. Dr. Ben Carson said, "We have been conditioned to think that only politicians can solve our problems, but at some point, maybe we will wake up and recognize that it was politicians who created our problems." America is the best country in the world. We are defined by our rule of law and our borders. Teach our children nothing is free. The thousands it costs to educate a student comes from the hardworking taxpayers. Nothing comes from government. Common sense and self-responsibility are a must. Media lies. Encourage children to search for the truth. Educate our children and leave politics alone until students are adult enough to understand how political movements affect the population as a whole and the cost to the taxpayers and their freedoms. I never thought I would see our youth marching to destroy their own constitutional rights. Every American should be disturbed by this. Anyone in favor of this hasn't given much thought to the damage to our republic. We must ensure that our schools remain places of education, not centers of indoctrination. And I want to thank you for permitting me time to speak to you guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Lay, for your comment, or Lee, for your comments. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy, I hadn't actually mentioned there's a 3-minute minimum or maximum. So
Okay,
please
great.
give your comment.
I am commenting on the candidate forum from last night. I watched it, and I now know who the two candidates are, and I just wanted to say some words about Carol Geary. Our family has had the pleasure of getting to work with Carol in the past when she was special education head, back when she was here, and I always found her very very knowledgeable, very level-headed, and she also took everyone's needs. She wanted the best for everybody, the best for the school, the best for the student. And I just was always very struck by her professionalism. So I just wanted to go and say I'm glad that Carol's running. I wish her the best. And I give her a very strong vote of confidence.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Dave, do you normally give, I'm hoping, I guess both of those people, Mr. Lee, could you remove yourself from the meeting and watch the YouTube video? Thank you. Let's see. We are now on, we have announcements.
announcement?
Yep, and I will
I'd like to
turn
make
this
an
over.
announcement.
Yep, and I'm turning it over to Maria. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Adrian. I would like to make an announcement on the board's behalf, congratulating the Mill River varsity cheer team, who are for the 4th year in a row Vermont Division II state champions, and which is a really impressive feat, especially this year in the wake of a pandemic year which has affected everything and has certainly limited their ability to probably practice together. I don't know all the details, but for them to pull that off, like, well done. And I would like to name all the members of that team. And I apologize if I mispronounce names. I'm going to do my best. I checked with my daughter. Lucia Verdon, Allison Usher, Emma Johnson, Kylie Goodell, Zoe Kange, Kieran Allen, Crystal Parham, and Rachel Clark. And Rachel Clark is the only senior on that team. So congratulations and thank you and good luck in wherever you head off to next. I would also like to congratulate their coach who's stepping down after this year, Tabitha Moore, who has been the coach for 12 years. She's been 9 years the head coach. During this time, the team has spent 6 years undefeated in the regular season. They've won 6 state titles, including a game day championship it's a fall competition. Thank you so much for all your work building a strong cheer program at Mill River. We really appreciate that and we wish you well.
Thank you, Maria. Well-deserved thanks to the team and to Tabitha. Thanks for sticking it out for 12 years. That's an amazing amount of time. I don't know if I only had boys, so the whole idea of cheerleading for 12 years is amazing.
Actually, I'm going to step in there. We had,
I was going to say, does anybody else
we had a boy cheerleader, if I'm not mistaken.
I didn't say it. I just didn't have boys that were interested in doing that. So, I mean, I know there are boy cheerleaders. Sorry if I gave the wrong impression. Are there any other announcements? Okay. I am now turning the meeting over to Maria for the informal hearing. If she can unmute herself.
Thank you. I controlled the wrong letter. Thank you, Adrian. So moving on, we are going to have our informal hearing. Let me check my notes here. So the way this is going to work, I'm going to let you know how the process is going. We're going to hear, this is a complaint lodged regarding policy B3, board member conflict of interest by Crystal Usher. And so what's going to happen is Crystal's going to make her statement. Adrian will make a statement. I will go over what choices that the board has to respond to this, and then we'll have some discussion. Motion will be made and seconded, and we'll and then we'll vote. So that's what the plan is. So Crystal, would you like to make your statement now?
Absolutely. Good evening, and thank you all for your time. I will admit I'm rather nervous to speak regarding this tonight, and I will say I consider myself a kind, caring, and compassionate person and community member. These are qualities that I would expect elected board members to carry as well. Please know that I find no pleasure in having made this complaint, actually quite the opposite. To see such behavior from a member of our school board is disturbing. Adrian, you are representing a board focused and working diligently for equality, and your behavior has shown the opposite of that. You have not taken any responsibility in the slanderous, hurtful, and untruthful comments you made just days before the election. Comments of fellow community members, 2 of which now serve on this board alongside of you. Not only have you violated policy, you have refused to admit wrongdoing or offer an apology. This complaint is in regards to policy B3 and VSBA Code of Ethics, specifically stating voice opinion respectfully and treat with respect other board members, administrators, school staff, and members of the public. Your comments blatantly show disrespect to the public. I could now ask if each board member can say with confidence that they adhere and expect fellow board members to adhere to policy. But sadly, I do not need to pose this question. I'll not only mention Adrian's actions, but also the disregard of the complaint shown by fellow board members when promptly selecting Adrian to serve as chair. My complaint was received by board members prior to this vote, and I suspect some had witnessed the comments on social media or front porch forum, taking no action and choosing to ignore the unethical behavior. Moving forward to the vote regarding this informal hearing, Sam seemed to struggle with her decision, appearing to place personal feelings before policy, while Asha quickly voted no, appearing to show no regard for policy altogether. If you yourself struggle to follow and or hold board members sitting alongside of you accountable to follow something as basic as a code of ethics policy, what other policies are being jeopardized? I can assure you, if I were to post something hurtful, disrespectful, or untruthful while calling out community members, my employer would harshly reprimand, if not terminate me. This is not a concern of mine, as my moral compass is better than that, and I would not name, call, or make false accusations against others. As Arn Majorel said in a recent board meeting, he lost by 6 votes. He was not in any way involved in what Adrian accused him of. As a result, we will never know if her public post caused him or others to lose a seat on the board. For clarification, I'll remind you Adrian's post was public, in the aspect all could see her derogatory comments about Julie, Todd, Bruce, Arn, and Matt. I am not a social media friend of Adrian's and had never visited her page prior to having the post shared with me, which I understand was also on Front Porch Forum. If I were in her position, I'd surely be remorseful. However, she's denied the complaint, which is why we are here this evening. Adrian's harsh words in a public format during an election while serving our community is in violation of policy B3. The fact that she and other board members do not recognize this is concerning. She did not remove the post prior to or even the days after the election. As elected board members, you are in a position to hold fellow members accountable, not disregard or ignore behavior based on personal feelings. I am sorry if this statement is harsh, but I expect to see kindness and respect within our community, especially from our school board, and I will advocate for that, as our school board members need to set the example for our youth. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Crystal. Adrian, would you like to respond to that, please?
Sure. I have a statement that I wanted to read to. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the complaint that I violated our ethics policy when I wrote a post on Front Porch Forum in March. 1, I support having this informal hearing to clear the air. Prior to this complaint being filed, I had planned to speak directly with the candidates mentioned. In fact, I have communicated with Matt, and I hope that we cleared the air at least a bit. When this formal complaint was submitted, I felt it was inappropriate to have any further communications with any of the people I mentioned in my post or to address it publicly. After this hearing, I will try to have those conversations. 2, while I completely support the clearing the air concept, I am concerned with one segment of this process. Who votes on the outcome? Bruce specifically mentioned that he was someone who was affected, and while Matt did not speak up, and I understand that he may not appreciate this, but I'm really sorry about this. They were both mentioned by the complaint as being injured by my post. The idea that they will be members of the quote unquote jury does not on its face appear to be proper. If a vote is taken at the end of this hearing, I request that they recuse themselves. To do otherwise taints the outcome and appears to be a clear conflict of interest. 3, in answer to the complaint, my post did not violate any of the 8 requirements of Mill River Unified Union School District's Policy B3. I did nothing that would in any manner serve my personal interests or result in any personal gain. In fact, my public statement addressed and supported the importance of honesty, transparency, protection of confidentiality, respect for others, and a, quote, fair presentation of all sides of the question. In the matters at issue, these are the values I find fundamental to our board's role in carrying out its responsibilities under Vermont education laws. Regarding the content of my post, I believed it to be true. And honestly, I still do. And further, I have as much right to share my opinions as anyone else. I did not divulge confidential information, nor was I speaking for the board. I identified myself as a board member to give context to my comments. Thank you for your attention. I do have other information if somebody asks for it in terms of some of the comments that I made. And I would like to say that I'm sorry if I hurt anybody's feelings, but this election was damaging to everyone. And the comments that were made and the posts that were made on Facebook, and I printed many, many pages of people just spreading unbelievably incomplete and exaggerated information. And we were not at liberty to give detailed information as to why it was wrong. And it was very hurtful to many people. And I'm sorry the election went the way it did. I really am. I have heard many comments from people that live in, New York, New Jersey, who say, oh, that's the way it always is down here. Well, I'm sorry it was that way here. And that's the end of my comment.
Thank you, Adrian. So what I'm going to do now is go over, I'm just going to read to you from the policy what our 4 choices are of what we can do. And then after that, I'm going to ask to hear from board members from a discussion. Ideally, I'd like to hear from everybody. And ideally, I'd like to not hear too many times from any one person, just so that we can get through this. I know everybody has something to contribute. So I'm just going to read to you the 4 choices that we have here. One of them, the first one, is to issue a public finding that the conflict of interest charge is not supported by the evidence and is therefore dismissed. Or we can issue a public finding that the conflict of interest charge is supported by the evidence and that the member should disqualify herself from voting or otherwise participating in board deliberations or decision related to that issue as required by Vermont statute, the issue being her commentary on the March 2021 election. The third one is issue a public finding that the conflict of interest charge is supported by the evidence, and in addition to disqualifying herself from voting or otherwise participating in board deliberations or decision, the board member should be formally censured or subjected to such other action as may be allowed by law, or take no action. So having read that, oh, Adrian, would you like to point something out?
Could you possibly read the actual conflict of interest policy?
Oh, yeah, thank you. I should do. I realized that actually while you and Crystal were both speaking, that I should do that. I will go through and I will read the conflict of interest policy. Thanks, Adrian. So members of the board recognize the ethical duty of all public officers to avoid conflicts of interest and to act in an ethical manner. Vermont statutes include a requirement that school boards adopt policies and procedures to avoid the appearance of conflicts of interest. In order to comply with the obligations thus imposed, school board members should observe the following standards. 1, board members will be familiar with the VSBA Code of Ethics and will observe its provisions. 2, board members will be familiar with and adhere to those provisions of Vermont education laws which define school board powers and govern board member compensation and public bidding processes. 3, a board member will do nothing intended to give the false impression that he or she has the authority to make decisions or take action on behalf of the board or the school administration. Or a board member will not take any action which is intended to give the impression that he or she would represent special interests or partisan politics for personal gain. 5, a board member will not use his or her position on the board in any manner intended to unfairly promote personal fiduciary interests or fiduciary interest of family members, friends, or supporters. 6, a board member will not accept anything of value in return for taking particular positions on matters before the board. 7, a board member may not be employed by the school district during the board member's term of office. 8, a board member will do nothing intended to leave the impression that his or her position on any issue can be influenced by anything other than a fair presentation of all sides of the question. When a board member becomes aware of involvement in a conflict of interest as defined in state law or this policy, he or she will declare the nature and extent of the conflict or appearance of conflict for inclusion in the board minutes and will abstain from voting and participating in the discussion of the issue giving rise to this conflict. When a conflict of interest claim against a board member is brought to the board in writing and is signed by another board member or the public, and the board member against whom the claim is made does not concur that a conflict in fact exists, the following board procedures will be followed. And we have followed the procedures so far. I'm not gonna read them all through. The complaint was made, and now we're having an informal hearing. Because it wasn't accepted by the board member. I'm going to paste a link to that policy in the comments here if anyone would like to read it over, because for me personally, I'd rather read it than listen to someone read it aloud. So there it is. And Dave, if you would just, I don't know if you can see everybody's screens.
Crystal did raise her hand just now.
People would raise their hands or put their hand raised, that would be helpful. Crystal.
Yes, thank you. I think it's only relevant to also read the VSBA Code of Ethics, as that's the first topic mentioned on the MRUUSD policy Code of Ethics. So I think it's pertinent to read that policy as well.
Okay, if you would hang on, I will just pull that right up here. I have it right here. Which is the Code of Ethics for Vermont School Board members. I can't see you. I'm going to go ahead with that right now if everyone would be all right with that. As a member of my school board, I will remember that my primary concerns, actually, I'm going to read this. I'm also going to put it in the chat right now while I'm reading it, so you have it right there. Must be educational welfare of the students in my district and excellent return on investment for taxpayers. I agree to conduct myself in accordance with the following commitments. I will act within the scope of my official role. Recognize that a board member's responsibility is to see that schools are well run, but not to run them. Act only as a member of the board and not assume any individual authority when the board is not in session, unless otherwise directed by the board. Give no directives as an individual board member to any school administrator or employee, publicly or privately. Avoid making commitments that may compromise the decision-making ability of the board or administrators. To uphold the highest ethical standards, not receive anything of value by contract or otherwise from the school district or supervisory union unless it is received as a result of a contract accepted after a public bid, in public recognition of service or achievement, or as a board stipend, reimbursement, or expense allowed by law for official duties performed as a member of such board. Not solicit or receive directly or indirectly any gift or compensation in return for making a recommendation or casting a vote. Agree to recuse and remove myself from board deliberation and votes when necessary to avoid appearance of conflict of interest. Not agree to the hiring of a superintendent, principal, or teacher already under contract with another school district unless assurance is first secured from the proper authority that the person can be released from his or her contract. Respect my peers, my constituents, and confidentiality considerations. Voice opinions respectfully and treat with respect other board members, administrators, school staff, and members of the public. Maintain confidentiality of information and discussion conducted in executive session and uphold applicable laws with respect to the confidentiality of student and employee information. and attend all regularly scheduled board meetings insofar as possible. Thank you. And now I can see hands raised. I cannot see everyone on the video. So I'm going to go in order of hands I see raised, and then I'm going to check in with anybody, any board member who has not spoken. So let me see. I'm just going to go on the order of my screen, and I see Bruce. Go ahead.
I have my hand down. Hi, I have several things to say. First of all, I'm new to the board. I had no idea I was going to be running for the board. I didn't even know who was on the board, except Maria, because she's in Wallingford. I knew Tammy because she was stepping down. I knew Lynn was on it. That's it. I knew nobody else. I don't think I've met anybody else personally. So I'm concerned about several things. I'm concerned, and I think at least the community in Wallingford is concerned about transparency of the board, honesty of the board. And I was concerned the day after the last meeting, we got a letter, an email from a fellow board member, and I'll read that. My fellow board members, and thinking about the discussion of public complaint at last night's board meeting, I have some reflections I wish to share. First, my understanding is there are people in the community, including newly elected board members, who are upset about a post of a fellow board member. Next, my understanding is the concern is around the breach of BSBA's code of ethics, but not board policy, and they were using board policy procedure to address VBSA code of ethics. You're right, and maybe we should be using Robert's Rules of Orders, which has got stricter punishments. Next, third,
excuse me, I'm sorry, Bruce, can I just clarify, is that a board member that wrote you this email?
yes.
Could we invite that board member to speak instead of, I mean, because this is a public board meeting, that would be,
Read this.
I think it would be appropriate for them to speak for themselves in this case.
Well, I want to read what was written. Then that person can speak. That's what I'm talking about, openness. Third, 2 of our newly elected board members are implicated in this matter. In hindsight, I believe the board should have asked for the recusal in the vote of a policy breach. Their votes could be perceived as retaliatory, and that's not something with which I can sit. Last, I would propose that the newly elected board members and members of the public consider a private discussion with a mediator around this matter. I do not feel that an informal hearing is either fair or good use of the board's time. Additionally, the required consequences do not have any relationship to the situation as they are tied to the policy, and this is a board code complaint. Right. Please do not reply all. You may reply to me only in order to be in compliance with the statute. Now that's what gets me. I happen to have an appointment with my attorney a couple days later, and after we finished our business, I said, could you read this, please? And his eyes got big when he read it. And I said, is it just me, or should I be concerned about this? He said, you should definitely be concerned about this. So
Okay, thank you, Bruce. Is this about the complaint to Adrian, or is this another topic that we need to address?
no, this is Adrian.
Okay.
But it goes to serial emails, just and he explained it. Just when you cannot say don't hit send all and be home free, because if somebody sent an email and she or he sent an email back out and that's a discussion. And it's not an open discussion. All right, now somebody can respond to that in a minute. The code of ethics, and I'm glad Crystal asked somebody to read it. The board member conflict of interest states, number 1, board members should be familiar with VSBA code of ethics and will observe its provisions. At the bottom of the code of ethics for Vermont school board members, it says, respect my peers, my constituents, and confidentiality considerations. Number 1 under there, voice opinions respectfully and treat with respect other board members, administrators, school staff, and members of the public. At that time, I was a member of the public. I think that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. I see a hand from Matt. Go ahead.
So after this whole incident happened with Front Porch Forum and Facebook, I took it upon myself to reach out to Adrian to try to clear the air, clear the water. I wasn't quite a board member yet at that point. I really felt that we had kind of smoothed the water the best we can. And then it was brought to my attention after the initial complaint was filed that she had edited her Facebook post and added a line at the end saying that it was her personal opinion and not speaking on behalf of the board, which was not in the original Facebook post, which brings concern to me that it was edited. The other thing that concerns me is that she's asking Bruce and I to recuse ourselves because it could be retaliatory when Maria is running the meeting and she could have benefited from it. Asha Carroll's in here. She could have benefited from it. Sam Green's in here. She could have benefited from it. There's really only about 3 board members that weren't involved in this situation. And if we start cherry picking people out who we feel could be on one side of the argument or the other, there's really not much of a board left. So those are my concerns.
Thank you, Matt. I see Adrian's hand up. Is your hand really up, Adrian?
Yeah, it really was.
Okay.
Matt, I did not change that Facebook page. I had just, when I put it on Facebook, I wanted to clarify it because after the Front Porch Forum went up, I said, I hope nobody misunderstands that. So when I put it on Facebook, I put that in. It was not an edited after the fact. I just want that to be clear.
Thank you, Adrian. I would like to hear from all the board members now. And and you're welcome to say that you don't have anything to say, but I do want to make sure that you all have an opportunity to speak to this. So I'm going to go through who I have here in order. So Liz, do you have a comment to make?
I don't have a comment to make. I am ready to vote on an action.
Okay, well, someone will have to make a motion first, but thanks, Liz. Let's see, BJ?
Yeah, I got a couple things. One thing, there was a lot of frustration going on in the school board. As a school board member, I did feel it too. So when I originally saw the post, I can sympathize with the frustration where that post came from. The other thing is Matt, Doug, and everybody else that was mentioned in it, I don't actually know your own post. Actually, I think Bruce. I saw one Front Porch Forum post from you since I'm in Wallingford. Matt, I have not seen yours. What I do know is that there was a lot of your supporters that did clump you together. So I think that's where that clumping has got together. I do agree that Adrian should have been called out on this. I think that was a proper thing to do. We all make some mistakes, and it's important to get called out on it. I'm hoping someone would call me out on a similar type of thing. I do think both Matt and Bruce should be able to vote on here. I think it is their right as school board members. The fact that it was mentioned before they were on, it's just one of the consequences of now they're here. So I do believe they do have the right. I do definitely want to support Adrian as a school board member, and where I think this is coming from. I've been on this board from when it just barely started becoming a merged district. Adrian started, I think, Shrewsbury even before me. Nod your head if I'm correct, Adrian, on that one. Which meant she was part of the merger process. And a big part of that merger process was making it really hard for Shrewsbury and Timoth and all the schools to be closed, despite the pressure from the state to close it. So I just want to point out that we wouldn't even have a school to really fight over if it wasn't for some of the efforts that Adrian has put forth. And I have seen her do other things for this district very passionately. And I just want to say I've seen her very passionate about the operation of these schools and for the community. Lastly is I do not believe people are fallible and there is some gray area. I don't think, and I do not believe the post that she made really violates B13. So that's kind of my thought process altogether.
Thank you, Bjorn. Moving along. Sam Green, you're next on my list. Would you like to speak to this?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to acknowledge first, Crystal, I feel for you. I think you and I felt a lot of the same sort of, it's hard to speak up, right? And I want to address that my turmoil was very much worrying about being thought to be too close or too personal to the issue, for sure. I will say, though, that even though Adrian and I are both from Shrewsbury, we have never actually met. Like, we didn't meet until our first board meeting. So small town for what? For me, the turmoil really was addressed. The fact that I thought this could be served well to be aired out. That was a thing. I know that a lot of folks in all our communities want to hear more from us. And that was my back and forth, was that cleansing that can happen from clearing the air and putting all the things out there and weighing that against the actual, technical decision of, was this policy trespassed upon? Boy, my words are failing me because I'm speaking from, I'm sure you feel me, Crystal. I feel you. I'm feeling a lot of kinship with how you feel. So, we're all learning. I've looked a lot of stuff up since then. And I am sorry if my pausing and reflection and all of that has given anyone the wrong impression. It's really that I just want to do what is right. And so that is my rambling way of wrapping myself up, I believe. So thank you for giving me a chance to clear that air between us even.
Thank you, Sam. Len, you're next on my screen.
Hi there. I'll be brief because I'm sort of repeating what other folks have said. I do think when we look at policy B3, it says board members will be familiar with the BSBA Code of Ethics and will observe its provisions. And then when you look at the Vermont School Boards Association and talks about voicing opinions respectfully and treat with respect other board members, administrators, staff, and members of the public. I think, in my mind, when we choose to run for any elected position, you better have some darn thick skin, because people, for whatever the reason may be, are not always going to agree with you, and in some instances disagree with you vehemently. And you need to be able to accept that. And so if some folks spoke poorly or said some things that weren't true, to me, you have to take the higher ground and simply accept that they have the right to say those things. Because I think otherwise we lower ourselves to the least common denominator and we're all in the same boat and we're not going to accomplish anything. Obviously, as BJ said, there's some frustration on the part of board members. But again, we need to be able to deal with that, and we can't take it personally. And Adrian, I have to disagree when you mentioned in your post and mentioned again tonight that a lot of it was untrue. I won't go into detail here, but there were many things that were true, that events that occurred. And, someday if someone wants to know about them, I'd be more than willing to write them a nice long letter. But so, just simply saying, well, they were untrue and they were biased, that's not true. There was information in there provided by others that was accurate. that events did happen. We, as board members, were part of that. We saw it happen. We were part of what happened. And I would hope that we wouldn't just forget about it and say, well, no, that didn't happen. That's not true. Some of it was perception, and I can understand saying that's not true, but some of it was factual and is true. So, you know, in my mind, the code of ethics takes precedent over everything. And I feel that that post and what was said is a violation of the Vermont School Board Association Code of Ethics.
Thanks, Len. I do see people with their hands up. I'm going to go through and just check in with the other board members who haven't spoken yet, and then I'll come back to people with their hands up. So Doug, you're the next person on my list.
Ooh, let me get that out of there. Let me give me one. I have two situations. One did not happen during the time frame that the porch forum thing went on. It happened later. Is that something that can be discussed here?
I think we're addressing the statements that Adrian made in Front Porch Forum that was the same text as she had in Facebook. So that's what we're addressing right now.
All right, then I'll keep that. All the other one just is going to have to sit there and sputter for a while. I think the post on Facebook forum was done for an election possibility. It was done because of some of the things that were happening, and I can understand the frustration. I'm a board member now for 25 years and have been in, I believe, 19 different elections. Thank God I won every one. But to use that type of language may or may not, and I'm not sure if it did either, may or may not change the voters that were there. To be honest with you, it put Adrian and I in a voting situation as a school board, and I lost the election there with 2 votes, which easily could have been saved out had that not been touched. I hate the feel of it that way. That's sort of a personal thing, and I'm not really wanting to do the personal type of stuff. But I think that that's where the conflict of interest came in. To say those things might have pushed somebody else out that might have voted the other way. But that's where I am with that. The other one, I will discuss with somebody at a later time. We'll see what we have to do there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Doug. Asha.
Thank you, Maria. First and foremost, I would like to address the concerns of the community members, and in particular, the candidates who addressed their experience. I want to underline the fact that in my experience running against Arn Majorel, that what I witnessed on Front Porch Forum, I did not view any Facebook activity of his. I don't know if he has a Facebook, but that what I viewed on Front Porch Forum of his personal statements, I did not find to be did not find to be untrue or demeaning in those statements that he made on that Front Porch Forum. I do not share several of his viewpoints, but I that was my experience with those statements. Regarding my vote, you know, Crystal, I know you said, I believe you suggested that my vote showed a disregard for policy. However, I would like to publicly state that I voted the way that I did because I did not find Adrian's actions a violation of Mill River Policy B3. And that was the vote in question at the time. I think it's a challenging thing when we get into social media. I think it's unfortunately, it's a gray area. I I can tell you that I'm proud of the campaign that I ran and that I ran a clean campaign. I can also tell you what sorts of comments I saw coming from community members raising their voices in an election where that is absolutely in accordance with their right of free speech. I also want to state my support of any board member to advocate to advocate for another candidate in an election. I just want to say that is why I voted the way I did last time. I, like others, have put considerable thought into this since last time. I've heard from members of the community. I've heavily weighed their thoughts and feedback. And I would say that my gut feeling to this is that if certain members of the board are not to vote on this because of their participation as candidates in that election, I too do not feel that it would be appropriate for me to vote and I would say so for all candidates. However, if those candidates are being included in this vote, I would stand by all candidates' rights to vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Asha. I see hands up from Bruce and Matt and Adrian, and we'll go in that order, if that's all right. And when they're done speaking, I will entertain motions. So Bruce, would you go, please?
Yeah, I just, first of all, Lynn, I've coached for too many years not to have thick skin. I want to say one or two other things. I'm out of here. 2 times this year, somebody on this board, 2 different people have disparaged a community member. And it's got to stop. Secondly, Todd Finn was a darn good principal. He's one of the top 3, 2 or 3 that I've worked under, and I've worked under many. And I was upset. I saw the transformation he was going through. I saw the letters from lawyers that said not to show up to a senior banquet and a senior graduation, which doesn't show me that we really respect our students' desires and wishes.
Bruce, I just like to have you keep to the March 2021 election and Adrian's comments, please.
This isn't. The Todd's letter was what she complained about.
Okay.
Because I only wrote about, I put Todd's letter down, and I was accused of stretching the truth, which did not happen. And I was accused of calling board members liars. I didn't even know the board members. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Bruce. Matt, your hand was up. Was it, or did you not intend to have it up?
I forgot to take it down. I apologize.
Okay, that's fine. That's totally normal. Adrian, had you forgotten to take yours down, or would you like to speak? No, you're good. Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to have a last word before I entertain motions? Would you like a reminder of what our choices are right now? Yes? Okay, I saw a nod. Any one nod wins there. So let me pull up that policy again. We've got 4 choices. One of them is that the charge is not supported by evidence and it's therefore dismissed. 2, that it is supported by the evidence and that then Adrian should disqualify herself from voting or otherwise participating in any deliberations or decision related to that issue, which is the March 2021 election. And 3, issue a public finding that the charge is supported and to disqualify her from voting or participating in deliberation in addition to formally censure her and subject her to any other action as may be allowed by law. And the fourth choice is just to take no action at all and move on. So I am ready to entertain a motion.
Temporary chair, can I
Yes.
ask for a point of clarification?
Please. Anything you can do. This is my first rodeo.
The number 2
Yes.
option there,
Mhm.
which would exclude her from voting on a particular item.
Mhm.
What particular item would that pertain to?
Well, that's a very good question. Really, this is regarding her comments during the election process of town meeting day 2021. So that it's something in the past. We can't jump back into the past, but that is what we're concerning ourselves with right now. So that's that one. The next one is similar. It includes that, but then it adds on another layer of what we are of censure.
I'm going to make a motion to the second one of that, which I believe states that it was supported by evidence, but it would enroll her just for that particular vote that affected.
Thanks. Bjorn, do we have a second for that motion? And if someone raises their hand, someone please tell me. I see Doug is a second. All right, now discussion. Bruce, I see you talking, but would you like to be your mic on?
Yes. What does censure involved? That's a big word, but what does it exactly mean?
I have a definition of it actually pulled up. I did, and now I'll get back. It's a formal statement of disapproval. So in this discussion, at this point, we have a motion made and seconded. And at this point, people can suggest that we withdraw that motion. They can suggest that we amend that motion. And should that happen, then we'll need someone to second that change. And ideally, that will be the person that seconded before. But I think anybody can second that. So that's what we can do right now in discussion. Otherwise, if there is no further discussion, we'll call the question. But I would like to just give some space for people to speak if they'd like to.
Am I up?
You're still up, Bruce.
Yeah, the only person who withdraw the motion is BJ.
Yes, that's correct.
So if he's not going to withdraw it, then we have to vote on that. But I think we probably should have had a little bit more discussion to find out what these other things. Something's got to happen. It can't just be. This is the second time it's happened this year. Not the same person.
Well, she's right.
Right now we're talking about Adrian. Bruce, do you have anything else to say? Otherwise, I'll call on Doug. Okay, go ahead, Doug.
I'm sort of concerned. I mean, I'm going to give Liz a big shout out here. That's I watched what happened during last summer, and I was extremely impressed with the way that she took that. My point being that right now, I think Adrian needs to have a public apology done to those that were affected, to be included at, and would be an amendment to BJ's motion.
Am I allowed to add that? Because I know there was 4 options.
Yeah, if you would like to amend your motion, you may do that at this time.
Okay, I will take Doug's advice and amend my motion to include a public apology to those mentioned.
All right. Is there anybody else who would like to take part in discussion of this motion? Len, please.
Just a question, that apology written or verbal or?
For the record, if it's mine, I would be perfectly fine with a verbal policy verbal apology.
It's been a long day. Go ahead.
Yeah. I would be okay with a verbal apology at a school board meeting.
Okay, thanks, BJ. Is there anybody else who would like to comment? I see Doug just raised a finger.
I was just gonna agree with BJ. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to give you another few seconds for someone to let me know that they would like to speak. And then I am going to take a roll call vote for this because I cannot see you. So I'm just going to go across my screen from the top. So starting with Liz.
I'm a nay.
Okay, thank you, Liz. Bjorn.
Yes.
Thank you. Bruce.
Yes.
Thank you. Sam.
No.
Thank you. Len.
Did you say Len? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Doug.
Yes.
All right. Asha.
No.
Okay. And Matt.
Yes.
Okay. And are there any abstentions? That would be, I am going to step aside because I'm moderating this. And I believe I have asked everybody here, except for Adrian, which I believe is appropriate. So is that correct? Is there anybody who I've missed? No? All right. Well, I have 5 votes for yes and 3 votes for no. So the yeses carry that motion. And so I will just read what we have here. And that is that it's basically a version of the third choice, is issue a public finding that the conflict of interest charge was supported by the evidence, and in addition to disqualifying herself from voting or otherwise participating in board deliberations or decisions, the board member should be subjected to another action as may be allowed by law, and that action is to issue a verbal apology. So I will hereby thank you all for taking part in that process, and I will now hand the meeting back to Adrian.
Thank you, Maria. Okay, we're going to continue on with the meeting. Let's see, we have principal updates. Do we have a volunteer to go first? Tyler, you're the only one that I see right away. So
well, I had my hand up, so I will gladly go first.
Okay, I didn't see your hand. Okay,
it's okay.
Go ahead.
No, just not the virtual hand, real hand.
Okay. Actually, we're frozen on my screen, so I didn't see your hand.
Sorry about that. It's okay.
That's okay.
Anyway, so I want to keep mine really short. Things have happened ongoing in the past. We had our SAT for our students, our in-house SAT last week, which was really successful. You know, our kids came in. It was really great to be able to do that in-house, so our kids felt comfortable in the testing site, and that went off really well. Our kids are currently in the middle of SBAC testing. That's grades for 7, 8, 9, and 11. So that started this week. Things I'm working on are we're starting to put together our master schedule for next year. We are definitely a little bit later in the process for that, so late in starting, only because we want to make sure we have the most up-to-date information from our teachers. So a teacher recommendation is going to be going out really shortly. I'm in the process of building that schedule, and then we're going to start putting kids into that schedule based off of teacher recommendations and also what students want, because we really do take that into case, or to see what students want and classes they want to take, and also with the teacher recommendation. Spring sports have begun and are going strong. It's really nice that the weather's cooperating. I don't know how many times in the spring where Kim and I have been talking about things and there's snow on the field, so that's definitely a plus. And also to the community, I really want everyone to know that graduation plans are ongoing. We are in the process of looking at what graduation can be. We're waiting for some guidance from the governor, but our staging, our chairs, our caps and gowns and diplomas, they've all been ordered. We're all moving forward with that, and as soon as we have some more definite information, we're putting it out to the public. But I want everyone to rest assured we're going to put on the most traditional ceremony that we can, based off of what the governor tells us we can and cannot do. And then also, real quick, I'm sorry, I want to jump on one thing that Maria French said, and congrats to the cheer team, much deserved. They do a fantastic job, and also to their coach Tabitha, 12 years. That's impressive. Being a high school coach myself in the past, 12 years is a long time. So congratulations and thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Tyler.
Yes. Bruce, I see you have a question down there.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. Are fans allowed at the games?
Yes.
That's all.
Are there any other questions? Okay. Jody, would you like to give your report?
Good evening. Everything is going well up in the Shrewsbury Mountain School. This week we started our SBAC testing for ELA. The kids got to dress up in funny socks and hats to make it a good time. It's been beautiful weather. We're almost past snow pants season. Still a little bit of snow up at the mountain school. We just sent out requests for bids for local food for our school cafeteria. We received coaching from the Vermont Community Garden Network in how to do that following our state and federal bidding process. So any farmers or local producers who are interested in supplying food to our cafeteria are invited to reach out. I'm very excited about that. And then some very sad news. I am sad to report that Lois Austin, our 3rd and 4th grade teacher, has announced her retirement. We are just devastated to see her go. I just want to publicly say that Lois will be greatly missed. She's an incredibly skilled educator. And so we have an open posting for a 3rd and 4th grade teacher that we are looking forward to filling with another excellent teacher.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Jody? Seeing none. Fred, would you like to go?
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. We had a lot of really cool things happening at Clarendon. Our 3rd grade class has their passion project to address all the plastic that's being used. And so they're bringing that to our food service, and they're working on a solution. Our 4th grade class is looking for kindness, acts of kindness, and they're catching each other. And once a week, we highlight who that person was. Our 5th and 6th grade class is working on our garden, our community complex garden. They're building boxes and filling them with dirt. And I'd like to take the next 15 seconds to say some thank yous. COVID has thrown us a couple of curveballs, actually 3. We've had 3 classes that have had to go remote because of COVID. And I want to thank the community. Our parents and families have been very understanding. Our learners, along with them, have just been stepping up to the plate and doing what they needed to do. I'd like to secondly thank the staff because they filled in where there were absences and holes in supervision. They just worked together and supported one another. And third and lastly, I'd like to thank Dave, Beth, and our nurse, Lisa, for giving up weekends to make calls and do contact tracing and get all the folks that needed to be informed. It was a pretty trying couple of weekends, but with all of the help from everybody, we got through it. So really appreciate all the efforts.
Are there questions for Fred? I reiterate your kudos to the nursing staff, Fred. They've been going far and above, including all the administrators. Maureen, would you like to go next? Dan, I haven't forgotten you.
Sure. It's been pretty quiet up at Timoth. We're in the middle of SBAC testing for ELA for grades 3 through 6. Just about the only thing that I can share that's pretty new in the last few weeks is that we have 2 of us going to the ecology school on scholarship over the summer, and we just did an interview with Burlington Free Press because they were interested, because we're an outdoor education type school, and we put a spin on it where it's kickstarting us coming out of COVID to get back into our outdoor program, and this is a great opportunity to learn about saltwater wetlands and do a comparison to our freshwater wetland up in Timoth. So pretty exciting, and it was a pretty neutral and positive article that came out today. And that's all I have for today. Any questions? Okay.
Thank you, Maureen. Okay, Dan.
Bless you, Jody. Good evening, everyone. I saw Jody sneeze there. Thanks for giving us an opportunity to share some of the cool happenings at Wallingford. We've been blasting music at the disco curb each morning and just trying to get kids to enter the building with a smile on their face while they're getting ready to jump into SBAC testing. We have some regulars that after they put stuff down, they come back out to the front and pretty much have a full-on dance party. And I've been put to shame multiple times by some of these kids' moves. But I'm proud of our students and our staff. I've been walking through some of the classrooms that have been SBAC testing, and you could hear a pin drop. And you can tell these kids are taking it seriously, and they're trying their very hardest, even under the most interesting year that they probably have ever had and hopefully ever will have in their education experience. Thank you, Fred, for giving the shout out to everyone that's been helping with some of the COVID calls. Dave and Beth and my Courtney, our nurse Courtney, also spent some time just hunting down families for COVID-related things. And it's just a true testament of their dedication, their passion for the best health and safety of our students, our families, and our staff. I do want to give a shout out to our staff because it's not just a one-time occurrence. It seems like daily they're being responsible and staying away when they have any sort of symptoms, which I know that it absolutely kills them to do that because they're people who usually wouldn't miss a day of work. But everyone else around the campus has pulled together to help cover when anyone's been out. It's been slim pickings on getting subs to fill in. So there's just a lot of staff wearing a lot of hats and making the best of it for our kids to have a great experience. So thanks for everyone. It's definitely a big family community, and together we're making it happen.
Thanks, Dan. Does anyone have any questions? Wow, I guess we're all getting sort of tired. We can then move on to central office reports. And Dave, would you like to start us off?
Sure. Thanks, Adrian. I'll be super brief. You received my written report. I'd be happy to take any questions on that. But Brian and I are sharing a presentation with you just a little bit later tonight about recovery planning and where that process sits currently. And then I have a little bit of information also to share later just with where we are and what we are thinking in terms of the possibility for more in-person instruction returning at Mill River. We'll just give you a preview of what we expect to unfold in the next couple of days. So be happy to take any questions.
I don't see any hands, Dave. So maybe we'll move on to Brian.
Good evening, everybody. I hope you're doing well. I will keep my comments brief. I will echo two things that you heard in a lot of the principal reports. Building administrators have been doing some hard work to pull off SBAC testing. That was something that last spring, the U.S. Department of Education granted waivers across the country so that federal testing did not have to happen. This year, that's not been the case. So that federal testing does need to happen. And a year into a pandemic with everybody tired, that's a heavy lift. And our building administrators, our educators, our students, our families are doing a lot of work to make that happen. So that's a huge effort from everybody. And arguably, it might not be the most important thing we're doing right now, but people are approaching it in a positive way and making it a worthwhile experience. We will get some data from that, and we'll be able to look at that and make it worthwhile. But it is a heavy lift, and I want to acknowledge that and the work that folks have been doing on that. The second thing is the health office and administrators who get pulled into that work. We've had more cases over the last month and a half, and we will probably still have some more. And the work that folks are doing to be quick, efficient, organized, and get information to folks in a way that minimizes spread is hugely important in keeping our communities, our schools safe. So that work is huge, and we appreciate that. Questions from anybody?
I don't see anyone, Brian.
Okay, thank you.
So how about we move on to Andrew?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Not too much to add to my written report. Most of the focus, as Brian and Dave are going to talk about here soon, is on the recovery efforts and trying to meet the different deadlines for those moving forward. The other piece that I've been focused on is putting together professional development for the end of the school year and then also over the summer to kind of dovetail with the recovery planning efforts as well. So as far as what those things will be contingent on how our recovery plan flushes out. Any questions for me?
I don't see anybody, so.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. We're waiting to hear all the plans. It'll be very exciting. Stan, what do you have to tell us?
Just summarizing the report that I had sent you on Friday. There's not too much changes since the last time we met. We're still estimating a about $880,000 unanticipated surplus from this year. Obviously, that's due to multiple things, regarding spending across the board in the budget. Our lunch program is holding its own, even though, our students aren't here every day. It's a tough challenge for our management company, but they are doing a good job at controlling their costs and providing a good food program for our kids, and also maintaining a reasonable financial situation for them. That's really all that I have. I don't know if anybody has any questions, or if they have any questions, they can feel free to contact me here in the office by phone or by email. Thank you.
Questions for Stan? Okay. Gary, you've had a buildings and grounds meeting. Do you have?
Good evening, folks. I really don't have much of anything to add to the written report, but there will be a lot of information coming from Doug's report as far as the Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting that we had last night. So with that in mind, I'll be happy to answer any questions, but Doug will be talking about a few things as we move forward with those reports as well.
I don't see any hands raised. I guess we'll wait. Carrie.
Good evening, everyone. When we met last in March, a few of you had requested some more specific data from our after-school and summer programs. So in the report that I provided you, what I did was provide the 4 key federal objectives that we have for 21st century programming. And those specifically are access and equity, quality programming, effective leadership, and sustainability of programs. So within the report, what you'll see is our outcomes as a district from FY20, which was the last completed report that we had. And those are actually aligned with those 4 objectives. And then in the future, I'll provide you some more specific student outcomes as we have that data available. Any questions?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm talking without my mic on. Okay, if nobody has any questions for any of our administrators, we will move on to potential in-person expansion update. No, guess I'm turning that over to Dave. Who is gone? Brian, can you step in?
Adrian, I wish I could jump in and take over on this,
Dave.
but I don't.
You were absent, and we are waiting. We're doing the in-person expansion.
I give you my apologies. I had a dog that was demanding my attention, and
That's
the
okay.
dog doesn't behave as well as you guys do. So
I
thanks.
just turned it over to you, and it was blank.
So yeah, just want to give you an update on where we are with in-person return. We were hoping for guidance from the state to be issued yesterday or Monday or even today. It has not yet been issued. My hunch is we may get that sometime tomorrow. We expect that that's going to give us flexibility to go to 3-foot distancing as opposed to 6-foot distancing, which is the primary factor that has caused us to need to be hybrid in the Mill River environment. Our plans, as has been shared with you previously, once we get that guidance, we will closely review that alongside the theoretical plans that Tyler and Jen have been developing for Mill River. And we've already been working on a side-by-side comparison of what an in-person 3-foot scenario looks like versus an in-person 6-foot scenario. We also are looking at the concept of comparing staying at our current 2 days in and 3 days remote and moving to a 4 days in and 1 day remote. The reason for that thinking, as opposed to going to straight 5 days in, is to not negatively impact our families that have chosen remote learning for the duration of this year. By doing 4 days and keeping 1 remote, we're able to maintain the integrity of what they're currently doing. So my plan, once we make sense of all that and get that on paper, would be to put out a survey to Mill River families and Mill River faculty and staff to gather feedback and input. Ideally, we'd have a tight turnaround, but we also have break bumping up against us very, very quickly. If we do end up making any shifts based on the feedback that we receive, my commitment is we won't do anything sooner than the 26th of April, which is a week after we return from break. There's no way we could possibly do anything sooner than that at this point in time. But again, we'll solicit feedback. We'll see what we get back. We'll make a decision about the best move forward. We have about 8 weeks left in the school year once we return on the 19th. So we'll figure out the best path for us. And I will keep you as a board updated as that all evolves. Happy to take any questions on that.
Wow, I expected a lot of questions, but no. Okay, Dave, I guess we'll wait for the next board meeting to have an update. Then we have committee business, and I turn it over to Len first off for personnel.
Actually, Adrian, do we have I think we got recovery update in there really quickly. Is that on there as
Oh,
well?
I'm sorry, you did.
Yeah,
Len,
so Brian and I
sorry.
have a quick presentation
Yep.
for you just to orient you with that. If you don't mind, I'll share my screen.
Yep.
I am hoping that you can see what looks like a river delta. Is everybody able to see that?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So the concept of recovery, we have actually struggled with that term a bit because we interpret that recovery means that there is a loss and then a desire to return to the spot that someone was in before there was the loss. And we don't think that that's an accurate representation of what's been going on in the COVID context and with remote learning and hybrid learning. The concept of a river delta is catching our attention a little bit more. You know, if we just describe what a river delta does, Len and I, as former social studies teachers, know this stuff inside and out. But, you know, a river delta is where that river fans itself out and the water goes in many different directions. But the important piece is that water is still always moving toward its ultimate destination, always moving to get to the ocean where it's going to end up. And that's how we're kind of viewing the dynamics around COVID remote, if there is any learning loss, and then what a recovery process looks like, is we're kind of looking at that spread, and then how do we get that water to make sure that it gets to its destination, realizing different paths of water are in different places on the map. That's kind of our our mindset overall. I will turn it to Brian. Are you with me, Brian? I can't see Brian.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, there you go. Brian and I are going to alternate slides. So Brian, go ahead, sir.
Yep. So the Agency of Education started getting us materials about this, maybe early March. It might have been about a week prior to that they were starting to talk about the recovery concept. The first date that was important was March 15th, and that was having a recovery team submitted to the agency. So we have a team that was based on the agency's recommendations that's pulling in a lot of different district folks and pulling in some building folks and pulling in a guidance person. We've been working to try and get some community partners, which were also a recommendation from the agency, and we have not had a ton of luck there. We've got some folks that we're at least still in conversation with, but I think the challenge there is at this point in the planning process, things are not mapped out very concretely and folks are busy. And when things start getting more concrete, we may be able to engage more community partners, if that makes sense. Meeting regionally on a regular basis was something that the agency was putting out there a lot early on, and what we've come to find out even as soon as late last week and another meeting this morning that I was in, that the meeting regionally is maybe not going to happen with our full team, but that's something that I'm going to be involved in. There have been some weekly meetings that I've been pulled into and will continue to be pulled into as we wrap up the month of April. So that's where we are with the team and what the agency has asked of us in that first milestone for working on this project.
In the direction that we received from the state, and BJ knows this because he's involved in this work in his own place of employment, there are some areas of obvious focus that thankfully align with the mindset that we already had adopted when it comes to recovery. But the first and top priority for us is social, emotional, and mental health and well-being for our students. That comes before any academic work. After that is re-engagement for students who've been disengaged and addressing truancy concerns. Although there's an interesting dynamic if you think about what truancy has looked like in the remote COVID realm, that's about disconnection. And it's about students that in that venue are not feeling the normal things that tether them to school. So we do know that one of the key solutions to that will be when more in-person instruction occurs, and hopefully in the fall when we hope that we are going to look and feel much, much closer to normal than we've been this year. But those are the first two priorities, and then that is followed by academic achievement and success. I guess another way to put that would be the state has acknowledged, and we know it to be true, that to just focus on skill and drill and tutoring and academic work during the course of the summer will neither attract families and students or solve any long-term needs that may have emerged. They may make us feel better in the moment, but they won't necessarily address the baseline issues of social, emotional, and connectedness. So that's where our focus will be as we design our plans.
So that first milestone was having a team identified, and then 2 days later I had a wonderful baby girl, I'll just throw that in there, who we are very, very lucky to have had. We're thrilled, over the moon, happy with that. So the next deadline coming up is April 15th, and that's going to be where we have an initial assessment of need. So basically looking at where we are with the assessments we've been taking and the data that we have, and getting a read on academically, what are the priorities that we need to focus on? Social, emotionally, what are those priorities? What really is our truancy rate? How many students are we looking at trying to re-engage? So that's coming up pretty fast to have that information. And then the agency is going to work with us on trying to help prioritize and match our district needs with some agency of education personnel or resources to help us plan and pull off something to address those needs. Do want to mention one quick thing. We do have a recovery team that's got about 8 people on it. That's by no means the extent of the engagement in that work. Had a great meeting today with building leaders, all of our building leaders, not just the ones on the recovery team. talking about this work and talking about going back and engaging their staff in what students need and what we need to address those needs. So that's going to be a wider conversation. That's not just happening on that recovery team. May 15th, we should have a draft plan, and June 1st, we should be hitting the ground running, implementing something. So summer programming, even thinking about hiring or putting programs in place for the next academic year and the year after, because the funding that we're looking at accessing to do some of this work is going to run for the next 2 fiscal years.
So in terms of what can you expect, what can community members or parents expect, this is kind of the broad picture of that. So in addition to our 21C grant funded position or summer programs, which are the programs that Carrie Becker oversees, Carrie was with us, I'm not sure if she's still on the meeting, we will most likely be developing other summer activities and other opportunities that are tied into the social, emotional, and community building dynamic as it relates to summertime. There's a good likelihood this looks different at the primary, and by primary I mean like pre-K through 2nd grade, intermediate meaning like 3rd grade through 5th or 6th, and then secondary levels being the Mill River based programs. One dynamic that we will have to sort out based on whatever that programming looks like is we don't yet know what we'll have in terms of staff interest or availability. It won't surprise any of you to know that this year has been challenging for educators, and educators are looking forward to possibly pausing and taking their breath. So to assume that we will have a fixed number of people available to just jump into ideas that we've come up with may or may not happen, and that's one of the key variables that we'll have to sort out. And as Brian mentioned, summer planning is one part of this. Putting solutions in place for the next entire school year is another part of this. And there's another fiscal year after that where we anticipate that we'll still be looking to have different solutions and programs in place that will support the recovery or the concept of moving toward the ocean as we're referring to the Delta piece.
So the funding that I was just mentioning a minute ago, we're looking at right now. We've got the grant available to us. We've had it maybe for about a week to start looking into the application. It's about $800,000. I believe it's $806,000 that we will be using to fund some of these initiatives to address the social emotional needs, the truancy reconnection needs, and the academic needs. There are some wider applications for some of this funding. The priorities are those 3, but if we have some funding left over, there are some things that we can start to look at that run along the same lines of other grants we've been accessing this year. So things that deal with safety and health, HVAC systems, personal protective equipment, things that we have to do, infrastructure type projects in those veins could definitely be funded with this as well. ESSER 3 is coming down the road a little bit later, and we do have a projected amount, and that's roughly 3 times the $800,000 we're looking at for ESSER 2, which is a large chunk of money. And that actually may be more suited for some of the bigger infrastructure type projects that could be fundable there. And that's something that while we're planning on using the ESSER 2 fundings very quickly here, things that aren't fitting there, it's nice to know that we have ESSER 3 coming down the road and we can be planning on that too. One interesting thing about these grants, they are one-time expenses. They have some strings attached, but then there are some other strings that are not attached that we normally have with grants. So it's going to be an interesting opportunity to do some things that our schools need that we normally couldn't do, if that makes sense.
One final piece I'd just like to add on the financial side of things. As Brian mentioned, we know the details behind ESSER 2. The details behind ESSER 3 are coming clearer to us. In case you're wondering how that money got distributed, like how did they decide how much districts get, they used the same formula that they use to decide title funding for us, which is based on our poverty levels, which are based on free reduced lunch applications. Just to give you a comparable, that ESSER 2 number that we have is about $2.5 million. A comparison, the Southwest Vermont Supervisory Union, which is based down in Bennington, which is a larger SU than we are a district, but their ESSER 3 number is over $18 million, just to give you a sense on the amount of dollars that are going into districts based on how those poverty numbers come through. We have tended to have lower poverty reporting on free reduced lunch applications than we believe to be accurate. We just have some consistent trends that some folks in our district have not been interested in completing that paperwork. We do make efforts to ensure that everyone who can does, but of course that's a personal decision in terms of how people want to proceed. Final thing I'd like to just share is there is a lot of attention on this money. It gets talked about at the state level, it gets talked about in the media, the whole concept of there's all kinds of federal dollars. Because of that, our intention is as we have concepts for programs, as we sort out the staffing and the duration, as we figure out the funding sources and what we'd like to organize in that regard, Brian and I intend to work with our finance committee first and say, hey, we just want to keep you up to speed with here's what we're looking at, here's what we're thinking, here's how we see these funds moving, and let this finance committee direct us on whether something should be presented at the full board level, whether we want to have board take official action to endorse anything. Of course, we have flexibility within the grant funding to manage how the dollars get allocated on the lines, but we do want to involve the board in this process so that you feel connected to the work, especially because this is very important and because it's very high profile. With that, Brian or I would be happy to answer any questions you might have. Maria, I see your hand. Thanks,
Dave. Yeah, I appreciate you keeping the board in the loop about all of this. And it's a lot of work to navigate this new world of needs of our kids and of funding that's available that's new, and we have to figure out what exactly that works. So I appreciate you keeping us in the loop. I would like to keep being updated. I think it's important for the finance committee specifically to understand about the funding, but I think for the board to see how this is playing out in schools, not because this isn't something that we're going to micromanage, but because this is something that gives us a sense of what's going on and how we're responding. And just to have some specific examples would be helpful to me, and and for you to share with us maybe what challenges are coming up with that along the way of well, we intended to do this, but this was an obstacle and this is how we dealt with it. I'd like to see some problem solving.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Thank you for that comment, Maria. Adrian, I see your hand.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I'm assuming that some of that money will be spent on personnel to help catch kids up and to work with teachers so that they're not totally stretched out. Are there ways, are we able to hire these people as temporary employees with specific length contracts to comport with the ESSER fund timelines?
Adrian, we already have that practice, especially for grant funded positions. We often have language in the contracts that say, this is a grant fund position contingent upon the availability of the funds. So we do have a standard protocol to build that in. Great suggestion. But we also want to be careful also to not create any long-term roles to be funded by this and then become local burden down the road. We want to be careful to manage that appropriately.
Okay. That was my concern.
Any other questions for Brian and I? Great. Thanks for hearing us out. Appreciate it.
Okay. Now we truly will move into the committee business. I'm sorry. Len?
Hi there. Several things. If you look under personnel, we have contracts, and then we have personnel action. And so we'll start with the contracts piece. First off, I'd like to move that we approve a contract for Nell Rice, 1.0 full-time equivalency English language arts teacher at Mill River, effective the 21-22 school year.
We have a second?
Oh, I'm sorry, Adrian.
No, I was going to say there was silence.
I'll second that.
Okay. You want me to keep going?
Yes.
So all those in favor of approving the contract for Nell Rice, if you can give me a thumbs up, hands up, whatever. All right. Thank you. Secondly, you should have received some information on the spring coaching staff, and sent from Kim and from David as well. I spoke with Kim today, and almost all of the folks are returning, except for varsity track. Dakota Garrow, who is a senior at Castleton and is on the track team at Castleton, he's taking over as varsity track. And middle school track and field, Brandon Ryan, who is a friend of Dakota Garrow's. So they both have some experience, but this will be their first year at Mill River. And so what I'd like to, instead of going through each of them, what I'd like to do is make a motion to I move to offer these spring coaching positions contracts, if that makes sense.
So moved.
Okay. Discussion. Any questions? Okay. Then all those in favor of approving contracts for the spring coaching roster? Could I see a thumbs up? I'm not seeing any pictures.
It's okay. You're frozen.
I am?
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe, Len, cut your video to preserve the audio. We just need audio. But you have to unmute yourself.
But unmuting myself doesn't help me see anybody.
No, but we'll count
make
for
more
you.
noise.
Okay. So did you call the question, Len?
Yes.
Yes.
And so I asked for those
Okay.
in favor.
Okay.
And all I see is little circles with little letters.
Oh, we'll count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have at least 7 yeses.
Okay. So I'm going to move right along then. And then the only other piece in terms of contracts was that we have several current postings that were on that same sheet, and that wasn't on that sheet that needs to be added is the Mill River assistant principal position is also in process. And then under personnel action, I'd like to make a motion based on administrative recommendation. I move that the Mill River Unified Union School District terminate the employment contract with teacher Jennifer Little effective immediately.
Is there a second?
I regret to second that.
Okay, thank you, Liz. All those in favor, if I could see a thumbs up or a hand, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
I count
mine,
8.
6. DJ?
DJ is a yes.
Yes, I'm
Okay.
yes.
Okay, and then Asha?
Is a yes.
Okay, and Sam?
And Sam is a yes.
Okay, so it's unanimous.
No, it is not. I don't believe Bruce voted yes.
Yeah, he
He
raised
did?
his hand.
Okay. Sorry, Bruce.
Yes, he did.
You didn't
Yep.
leave your hand up. Okay.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
So that's unanimous. That passes. And with that, I am done with personnel.
Okay, thank you, Len, and thank you, and congratulations to all our new employees. Let's see, we have policy update. BJ.
I don't think I have anything to report. Our policy meetings did move, so The next one is actually going to be April 13th at 5:30. Yeah, I'm looking at the right year and everything. So Tuesday, April 13th at 5:30.
Okay.
Hopefully.
Thanks, BJ.
Yep.
Nothing else? Okay. Negotiations, we actually have something to report. We had reopened, as we discussed the last meeting, the support staff agreement to adjust the custodial salary schedule. And I guess we need to ratify that adjustment. Dave, do you have anything that would give people information on what changed? I mean, there was what the agreed upon thing was. Go ahead. You unmuted.
Yeah, you bet. So is it okay, Adrian, if I just read the statement that the support staff used? That
I think that would be wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank
so the issue at hand was the support staff and the board negotiation teams. And by the way, thank you to Matt and Sam who have joined the board negotiation team and hopped in seamlessly. Became aware that the recently ratified 2020 through 2022 agreement failed to sort out a key detail regarding wage placement for custodians, which created concerns about inequities. Both parties agreed to reopen the negotiations to address that one specific part of the agreement. The teams met on March 23rd and resolved the issue collaboratively. The solution that was come up with was, in addition to the already ratified placement schedule, custodial years of service in the district are recognized in order to create a fair and equitable solution for all custodial employees. And both parties were asked to take the adjustment back to their groups. The support staff did ratify, I believe it was at the very beginning of this week, so squared away on the support staff side and just awaiting board ratification as well. Job well done by both teams.
Yeah, it was a very, very collaborative experience. I would make a motion to ratify the, I guess, the adjusted support staff agreement, the modified support staff agreement. Thank you, BJ. Are you seconding? That was the two fingers. Okay. So we have a second. Is there discussion? I don't see anybody. Speak up if you may be frozen. Okay. I still don't see anybody. So I guess we're good. I'll call the question. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand or a thumbs up. Sam, I can't see you because you're frozen on my screen, so I don't know what you're voting.
Sorry, my internet is super sad, but I am a yes.
Okay, so we have a unanimous yes vote on that. And I don't have anything else on negotiations. Buildings and grounds, Doug.
There we go, got me away. Yeah, building and grounds, we met last night from 6 to close to 7. We had pretty good situation. I want to thank both Matt and Bruce for voting me in as the committee chair. The last time I was chair of any committee was actually the one that put David Younts in for our superintendent. The last time I was chair of anything was actually the last time Mill River Union High School had a board, and we finished it off in 4 months. We talked a number of things about where we are and stuff that's been happening. We are, let's see, where am I going to go? I'm not going to do this very well because I'm not used to this stuff yet. We talked about some staffing. We're short a couple of people on the custodial type of staff, and they'll looking at replacing those down the road, putting that back up. Bus drivers, as usual, we are down, by the way, 3. We've been using a lot of the staff, and even at times, and I'll explain to you why later on, we're using students at the high school to take some of our kids to where they need to be. We talked about a problem, a water issue up at Tinmouth. They get the water from another spot, which goes into the building. Generally use anywhere from 30 to 50 gallons a day. The meter is coming through at more than 600 gallons a day. There's a break somewhere under the ground. And as soon as everything thaws out, which should be a little while longer in Tinmouth, that we're going to be able to find what that is and get that fixed. actually, the Tinmouth School is actually in charge of the water. So it's not as if we're getting charged extra for something like that, although we're spending it for electricity and such. Where am I here? All right. Gary, have I missed a whole bunch or just a little or something with the other? Oh, I got a few others. Hold on.
Doug.
Yeah. Things I had missed. Wallingford is having some issues with some doors that come in. The office has visuals to whoever's at the door, and this one I guess is not working that way. So they're going to do some changes there. Where am I? I wrote some stuff down. Yeah, I'm going to get interested in use of this stuff. That's for sure. Spears. Doors for we're doing some gardening up at Shrewsbury Mountain School. That's something we've been sort of working with. And we're glad that we're making what we can in the high school, getting the viruses and stuff out of the building through the filters and through the air changes. Hasn't been much more expensive for us. I think it's pretty much, if not the same, a little bit cheaper because of the changes that we made at the level. Our two new members of the committee, we're sort of wanting to one of these days take a trip through some of the buildings to get them an idea of what we're dealing with and what's out there. That will happen as soon as we get a good access to the buildings without causing the virus to come around and play. Let me see. All the buildings are going through, thanks to the state of Vermont, and I think some cases the federal government, they're looking for lead problems. The water systems are tested for lead that's coming through there. Generally, it's what's affected is not the faucets that are there. What's affected is the piping that goes to that, probably because the piping has a lot more age in it. Water piping normally has a sealer on the inside to keep things from happening. Over the years, that sealer tends to go away and the lead is there. It tends to go away if you're using the water. When they check it and test it and see what out, if you check it first thing in the morning, you're going to have the water that absorbs some of the lead that's there. The amount is not really an awful lot. It's just more than what the government wants us to do. So we'll be doing some changing in the places that we can. We're going to put on some lead filters to catch that between where it comes out of the wall and goes into the faucets, or those that are there to in the kitchen to give us some water for use. How are we doing, Gary? Am I getting close to everything except for the leader stuff?
Well, yeah, there's a number of things that we wanted to go over as far as bids that recently came in. Some things that need to get read into the record, the bid pricing, and then our recommendation for those 3 bids.
Yep, I've got that one in front of me.
Okay.
You also have a hand raised from Dave.
Hello, David.
Hey, Doug, if you don't mind, a quick question, because you caught my attention with, I feel like I should know about this one and I feel ignorant for not knowing. You mentioned something about students managing transportation for students, and I'm curious what those details are about.
Yeah, it does seem kind of funny, but the state allows that in certain situations. Where am I here? Up. Yeah, Gary was telling us, I'm not sure what the age brings on, but bus drivers are required in the big buses and stuff, and the people that are there. If you normally operate a bus with 7 people or less, which means 1 driver and 6 students, having a license to drive a bus isn't required. So we're using some of the students to do some of the busing, or some of the people that aren't licensed as a bus driver to make student deliveries with 6 students or less.
Doug, can I ask Gary? Yeah, can I ask Gary to clarify that, because
Doug, we're getting a little confused with the van issue. The issue is the people that we're using to drive the van are not students. Our staff is driving the van, and we're driving students in the van. So we do not have students that are transporting other students. We have staff members that are transporting students within the van, the minivan that we have.
Oh, let me change my stuff. Okay.
I appreciate that clarification, guys. That one got my antenna up a little bit.
Yeah.
Did it run a little bit too. All right. Stan, excuse me, Gary, anyone you want first?
My suggestion would be the Timoth Roofing, because that's the largest one.
Okay. All right. What we have before us, and I'll come up with a motion in a minute. Timoth Elementary School is having issues with the roof. A majority of them are the asphalt shingle works that they have, and a number of them are actually slate. We got a bid date, and it was previous to that, but the bid date came in on the 4th of March for this year for bids to replace the roof at the Timoth Elementary School. We had 3 bidders come back to us, one located in Fairhaven, Premier Roof Solutions at their bid amount was $84,855 even. Another one was a Bannister Custom Exteriors. It's out of Fairfax for $90,294.27. And a company listed only as DFE was out of Colchester, $172,620. After evaluating the bids, Operations Department recommends awarding the Timoth Elementary School contract to Premier Roofing Solutions at a bid price of $84,855, and that is my motion. I move that the MRUUSD School Board approve the Timoth Elementary Roofing Project contract award to Premier Solutions at the total price of $84,855. The said project to be paid for using funds from the original 2018 capital bond.
I'll second that, Doug. That's Adrian.
Any other discussion?
What exactly are we doing? I mean, you said part of it's asphalt, part of it's slate. We're not removing the slate roof.
Okay, Gary, it's yours.
Yeah, it's a total replacement of the asphalt roofing systems and then repair as necessary of the slate roofing. And we have an allowance in the bid for so many dollars for slate, basically paid for on a per slate basis. So the district representative and the contractor would take a look at the roof and decide which slates needed to be repaired, and then we would move on from there.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions?
BJ has his hand raised.
Yeah, quickly. This is Timoth. Am I correct?
Yes.
How does it affect it since the community center is also attached to the school? What's
that? I don't know. Have you got any ideas on that, Gary? Is that something that?
Yeah, the agreement that is in place has the district responsible for the entire complex.
Okay.
Good enough. Any other questions? Hopefully I can see about 6 of you guys and gals. No other questions, and I'll call the...
Dave, are you had his hand raised?
Who?
Dave. I'm not sure if he didn't
I apologize.
take it down.
That's a negligent lingering hand. Sorry.
Okay. Sorry, Doug. Just didn't want to miss somebody.
Okay. No other questions. I call the vote. All in favor of awarding that to, where is that? Premier Roof Solutions. Either say aye or hold up a thumb or a palm. I'm not sure how others are. I see 1, 2, 3, 4.
It's unanimous.
5, 6, and mine is 7.
Yep. You have everybody. You may not see them all, but everybody said yes.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Number 2, let's do the busing first. That's a little more complicated. We'll get this out of the way. February the 24th, we held an open bidding to the purchase of 2 new school buses. Received 4 bids, and below are the results of the bids per bus. W.C. Cressy & Son had a bid of $90,111, and that's a per bus unit. We're looking for 2 new ones. Bid includes the base price of $85,842 plus additional accessories, which are camera system for interior and exterior at $36.69, severe duty wiring for $600. Another company, Datco Sales and Service, was at $90,555. It included $86,640 plus additional necessary, accessory, which was the camera that's there. Anderson Bluebird Sales was $93,337, and it's a 72 passenger bus. Also included a camera system, both interior and exterior. That was for $87,977. The last was Union Electric. Was not for the camera system. Their price for them was $335,150 for their buses. And the Transportation Department suggests that we contract with W.C. Cressy & Son beyond being the low bidder base price. They're a company they have worked with in the past and has always been responsive. Excuse me, providing continuity in terms of service and the bus model is also an advantage to accepting this bid. Additionally, one of their service providers is Earl's Truck Repair, which is conveniently located in Cinderella and currently services our other buses. They also offer one of the most complete warranties available. For the new board members, it started out as my brother operating that place. He has retired and my nephew has taken over. I have no ties to that whatsoever. I receive nothing. It doesn't matter what they do or what I do. It's not me. Okay, any questions on those for the moment? Oh, Gary?
Doug, might I suggest that you read the other document, the one that says to read into the record? That has the specific information that we need to get into the record on the bid date, on the price per bus, and what we're recommending.
Right on the back of the paperwork that you gave me. The motion, correct? Or there's other thing?
Now, the information above the motion that says read into the record.
Oh, read into the record. Yeah, read into the record. Following bid prices, which represent the base bid, plus a selected ad alternative to a video recording camera system, were received on February 24th for additional 2 buses to replace aging vehicles within the existing bus fleet. Cressy & Son, $90,111 per bus. Datco Sales and Service, $90,555 per bus. Anderson Bluebird, $93,337 per bus, and Lion Electric, $335,150. After evaluation of the bids received, Transportation Department recommends acceptance of the W.C. Cressy bid at a total of $90,111 per bus, or a total of $180,222 for the 2 buses required. Now, there's also something in the motion to talk about for finance for our finance guy there, Stan. So any questions that I need to verify and to add to? See, nobody's raising hands. Seeing none, I move that the Mill River Unified Union School District School Board approve the purchase of 2 buses from W.C. Cressy at the total price of $180,222, pending the business office arranging successful financing for annual payments, as is typical for past bus purchases by the district.
Hey, Doug, I think BJ had his hand up.
Go ahead, BJ. Mute.
You're on mute.
It's the end of the day. I just remember some conversations before about an electric bus. Whatever happened to that? And is that something we did purchase? I don't remember.
Now, a couple years back, I guess at this point, we were looking into becoming part of a pilot program that the state of Vermont was offering using an electric bus. And at that time, the board decided not to elect to participate in that pilot program. We always solicit a bid for an electric bus when we send out our bids for buses. And that's the very large price that you just saw from Lion Electric.
Okay. In that case, I second the motion.
Okay. Any questions beyond before we call the question? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye, raising your hand, or do a thumbs up. Counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 with myself. Beyond anybody else in there? Can't see just those two. Okay, I have one more, I believe. Yeah, I do. There we go. The third and last motion I'm going to be making for is the following bid prices received on March 25th for additional all-wheel drive van to add to the existing van fleet. Is it just one, Gary? Just one.
Yes, just one van, correct.
Okay. We had two come to us, one from Key Honda for $32,101, one from Alderman's Toyota for $36,375. And after evaluation of the bids received, the Transportation Department recommends the acceptance excuse me, of Alderman's Toyota's bid at a total pre-rebate price of $36,375. Let me see. Okay, I'm going to have two. Actually, before I do that, any questions regarding that?
Doug, this is Liz. You have a rebate? Tell us about the rebate.
There are always potential rebates for any vehicle that is purchased. The bids were put out in the month of March, but by the time we get around to purchasing the van, it would be the month of April. So we are unable to determine ahead of time what the possible rebates would be during the month of April. So this is the purchase price. This is the maximum price that it would be without any rebates, and then we would apply whatever rebates were applicable that were available in the month of April.
Okay, can you elaborate why? Did I hear correctly that the Key Honda vehicle was $32,000 and the Alderman's was $36,000, and you're recommending the Alderman's vehicle?
You did hear that correctly. The Key Honda is not an all-wheel drive vehicle. It is a standard two-wheel drive vehicle. So they really did not meet the specification requirements.
Thank you for that.
Okay, any other questions?
Doug, I'm not sure you had a second yet.
Did I have one from BJ? No, that was the other bus.
Okay, he's seconding it now.
You got it.
Keep going.
We gourded him into it. Let's see. Did I have the first motion done? I don't remember that. That's just a long day is right. All right, I'll do the first motion then. Motion number 1. Move that the MRUUSD School Board approve the purchase of a new all-wheel drive minivan from Alderman's Toyota for a price not to exceed $36,375, pending the business office obtaining an appropriate waiver from the state of Vermont for having received only the 2 bids. Further, the business office is to determine the most advantageous purchasing plan. I'm looking for a second. Oh,
Matt seconding.
Sam's got one. Way to go. Any questions before I call the vote? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to purchase the van from Alderman's Toyota signify by saying aye, holding your thumb or your hand.
Lenny says aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Unanimous.
Unanimous.
Yep.
Okay, the second one is motion is to move that the MRUUSD School Board approve a budget line item transfer in the amount of $37,000 from the bus lease line to a capital equipment purchase line to cover the van purchase. Is there a second?
But Doug, could you read that again? That was a little too fast for my brain.
Okay, yeah, this time me too. Move that the school board approve a budget line item transfer in the amount of $37,000, which will cover the costs, from the bus lease line to a capital equipment purchase line to cover the van purchase.
I second that.
Gary, which one of these was that we talked about was actually going to be in current current budget as opposed to next year's budget?
Yeah. Because of COVID timing, the van purchase, supply chain issues, and frankly, at the beginning of the school year, we did not know whether we were going to be in person at all ever for the year. So we did not order our buses right away that were carried in this fiscal year. So the buses are not going to arrive until next fiscal year. So the buses that were just approved are actually paid for out of the fiscal year 21 budgets. So what that means is we actually have money available in fiscal year 20 budget for 2 buses that we are not going to use. It's that money we are going to use to purchase the van that's in question at the moment.
Thank you very much. I knew there was something in there. Just couldn't remember it. This is getting crazy. So hearing no more questions, we'll call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye. Raise your thumb or hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
You have a
7.
unanimous vote.
Unanimous vote. Thank you very much. The next B&G meeting is, let me get my page out here. I'm sure I've got it here. Yes, I do. I know I do. I got May the 20th. Is it April, isn't it?
It would be May 4th would be the Tuesday before the next board meeting.
That'll be at May the 4th, Tuesday at 6 o'clock. We will, when we get it assured, we'll put it out so everybody knows. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. We will go on to community engagement. Maria?
Where are you? There you are.
Hey, Maria.
I'm here. Sorry. No, I was perched. I was finally taking a seat for a second, but I'm back. Community engagement. We have not had a meeting since our last board meeting, so I don't have anything new to report there. I do. We have had a community conversation, though, which was great. And thank you to those who came. And just for the record, I'm going to go back over the different, very briefly, because we're so tired. The difference between community engagement and the community conversations is the community engagement committee works on helping the board more effectively engage with our community members in the 4 towns, and including residents of the towns, but also our school communities as well. The community conversations are an opportunity for people to come and talk informally with a small number of school board members, not a quorum of the board or of any one committee, and ask questions and say, I heard this thing, tell me more about this. It's just a good time to have a conversation, to meet your board members in a less formal setting. And so if you have questions about what's going on, that's a great place to come. If you are concerned with how the board is engaging with the community, that's a reason to come to the committee meeting and speak in public comment. So that's the difference between those things. So Asha, if you wouldn't mind ever so briefly just going over what the topics were that we talked about in the conversation this month or in March.
Yeah, thank you so much, Maria. And thank you.
Thank you for taking the notes.
Yeah, my pleasure. So we did meet, as Maria said, on March 22nd. And in attendance, we had 2 board members and 7 community members. I'll just give a brief overview, as Maria said, of topics discussed. We discussed school hours for 2021 and for the 2021-22 school year. We also discussed school start date for the 2021-22 school year. We discussed our in-person versus remote learning model for the 2020-21 school year. We also discussed early release Mondays. There was a discussion on remote synchronous learning and in-person learning and the timing thereof. There was a discussion about enrollment and school choice. and there were several, there were a handful of community members who attended but did not bring questions, but came to listen and learn more. And at the close of the meeting, we had a 10-minute wrap up where folks had the space to raise any additional thoughts or questions.
Thanks, Asha. And I see your hand up. Adrienne, go ahead.
I was just curious. I mean, that was pretty wide-ranging discussion. Is there anything that other than just that the topics were discussed, anything that the board should be aware of that was brought up either as a concern or as something that they wanted changed? I mean, I think some of that is to make us aware of how people are feeling.
It is, and the intention over the long run, which we still need to actually act upon, it is to collect those, the notes that we have, and we're going to put them into a document that's going to be available on the website. Ideally, really soon. We still have to figure out the logistics of that. That will be sort of a working document that after each meeting, whoever's taking the notes will go in and put those in and add to whatever the index is of that. So when we say, we talked about pre-K and enrollment, they can go into that and see what was discussed. And if they have more questions, that's another opportunity to go to their board member.
Are the community engagement, these get-togethers, are they also a way to inform the board for concerns that, as I said, we may need to act upon? I mean, I think as a prompt sort of response to people, the board needs to hear what the concerns are.
I think that's a really valid point, and that might need to be a separate agenda item, really, as far as things that have come up in these conversations, because I really want to separate community engagement committee and community conversations, because those are very different things with different purposes. Part of the purpose is to, if someone brings up a question, to then, I mean, if there was something major that the board needed to hear, then that would be something that I would encourage someone to bring to the board. This is of an informal situation of a conversation of something. And it also, if someone has a question about something specific, it'd be like, oh, well, the best person to talk to about this is this person. It's not necessarily that the board members who are leading that particular discussion, it's not that they are experts in any of the things that they're answering questions about, but they're not necessarily providing the answers so much as helping the group get to be able to find where they can find information if that information isn't readily available. Does that make sense? It's late.
Yep, thank you.
I saw Bruce's hand up too.
Yeah, can these things be recorded so other community people can look at it?
That's a really good question. We've been talking about that, and to preserve the informal nature of it and the willingness of people to come and talk and be as relaxed as possible, we have opted so far to take notes. And that, I apologize for the fact that we haven't gotten them up yet. But no, we're not at this point recording them. That has come up in discussion, and we're happy to keep discussing that and seeing how that would be more so. Really, because this is such a long meeting, I did say let's be really brief on going over these things, because I think at this point, speaking for myself personally on the board, I am not ready to take in a whole lot more new information right now. So
just as an addition,
ahead,
Maria
Adrienne.
and Bruce, we've actually had people that have been very upset with the idea of recording because they don't feel that they're able to be as frank in their questioning because they don't want to be identified. And I mean, that's part of the discussion that we have to work through.
And there is an opportunity at public comment in a board meeting to speak and be recorded and be part of the minutes there, but we aren't collecting names on these. I am happy to answer more questions about it. If people have any questions they'd like to email about it, you can write to the community engagement. It's communityengagement@millriverschools.org. And what we will be talking about at the next community engagement meeting, which is on April 13th, which is next Tuesday, we will be talking about the community conversations again, because I feel like we need to continue to evaluate those as we're still starting out this year and doing them. And we're also going to be talking about board community communication, specifically about emails. That's also on the agenda. The next community conversation is on April 22nd, I believe, and I would like to thank all the board members who have signed up so far. We still have a couple more of you who need to sign up, and there are still plenty of spaces for you. Once everybody has signed up, I will put together a calendar that I will mail out to everyone that includes when your obligations are. So thank you so much for taking part in that. I think this is really important for us to do. Are there any more questions? Asha.
I had a brief comment. Thank you all. I wanted to comment that in my position, I was the note taker for this particular meeting, and so not only has the meeting been documented in detailed notes, but also, as Maria mentioned, I have, as a part of that process, turned every inquiry from that conversation into a Q&A, which takes the question directly anonymously, and then also provides the answer that was provided at that meeting. I also would like to reiterate and to echo what Maria said. Certainly, when members present feel that, my hope is that if and when members present feel that they do not have an answer to the question, that members would go seeking answer to that question and make sure that that loop is completed. And I think that's an important part of the process. Adrian, to answer your question, there were no questions that I felt at the end of that conversation needed additional attention from the board. However, if that comes up in future conversations, I'm with Maria. I think that we would do well in future community engagement committee meetings to identify a process for doing so. Thank you.
Thanks for that wrap up, Asha. That's really helpful. This is a relatively new committee, and these are relatively new processes. So we're working on it, and input is really helpful, and we are taking note. So thank you. VJ.
One thing for the committee to consider is possibly recording it just for documentation purposes for yourself, so that if there is something that ever does come up, we can bring up what happened.
That's a good idea, BJ.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, we'll bring that on Tuesday.
Yeah, so maybe not publicize it for people to record, but at least for documentation.
And members of the board who are not on that committee, you are always welcome to come to a committee meeting, because I know you'd love to add another committee meeting to your schedule. But I really think I think it's important, and I really value your input. So you're welcome. Thank you.
And actually, I was going to also say that right before I turn to Liz with finance, all board meetings are open to the public and to any board meter or member. So feel free. Okay, now we're going to Liz for finance.
Good evening, everyone. We have the following payroll and pay orders for consideration and approval. I'm going to start with payroll. Dated March 26th, we have regular payroll in the amount of $611,268.70. Dated April 1st, we have regular payroll in the amount of $6,020.52 for a total of $617,289.22. We have the following pay orders. From the general fund, we have a pay order in the amount of $384,025.70. Also from the general fund, we have a pay order in the amount of $979.49. From ASP, which is after school program, we have a pay order in the amount of $249.10. From our food program, we have a pay order in the amount of $25,707.79 for a total of $423,962.08. And I move we approve these pay orders and this payroll as presented. So do I have a, do I need a second?
Sam seconded.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Does anybody have any questions? Doug, do you wish to make any comments this evening?
Yeah, comment is I didn't have a chance the last couple of days. Have been about as hectic as possible. I will look through it tomorrow and I will notify each of the board members on our email situation. If not tomorrow, by Friday.
Okay, thank you for that. So Adrian, are you calling the question or am I?
You can call the question.
Okay, so all those in favor of accepting payroll and pay orders as presented, please give me a thumbs up. Or a pen up, Bruce. All right, thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you, everybody. And our next finance meeting, which is also open to the public, is April 26th at 4:30 p.m.
Okay. We now are going to have the discussion of the two candidates for filling the Clarendon spot. I did speak with Mike Klopshin today, and he was impressed by both the candidates, speaking as an individual, and understood where our process was going, and wanted us to understand that Clarendon was going to be holding a vote. And in fact, they had sent through their administrative assistant the letter that was dated March 24th and requested that I read it. So I will do that, and then we can go into further discussion of the actual candidates. To Mill River Unified Union School Board from the Clarendon Select Board, RE the school board vacancy. Mill River School Directors, Act 154 of 2020, which was H 969, pages 116 to 117, Section B states, notwithstanding any provision of law to the contrary, if a vacancy occurs on the board of a unified union school district and the vacancy is in a seat that is allocated to a specific town, the clerk of the unified union school district shall immediately notify the select board of the town. Within 30 days after the receipt of that notice, the Unified Union School District Board, I believe it said in consultation with the Select Board, shall appoint a person who is otherwise eligible to serve as a member of the Unified Union School District Board to fill the vacancy until an election is held at an annual or special meeting, unless otherwise provided in accordance with the Unified Union School District's Articles of Agreement. Based on this statute, the Clarendon Select Board came to a unanimous agreement at their March 22nd meeting to hold an election at a special meeting to elect a school director for the vacant Clarendon seat on the school board. The election will be held on Tuesday, May 18th, 2021 at the Clarendon Town Hall. All interested parties should direct their attention to the town clerk to request to be put on the ballot. No signatures will be required on the petitions due to COVID-19 restrictions. Additionally, the Select Board unanimously decided to request that the school board halt the appointment process and leave the position open until the day of election. If the school board chooses to continue with their appointment process, then the candidate that is appointed on April 7th will serve from April 7th to May 18th. If the same candidate is elected on May 18th, that individual will continue on with their term through March 2022. If a different candidate has been elected, then that candidate will serve on the school board and fill the Clarendon seat for the rest of their term. The Select Board
has settled on this solution to promote unity among the town, school district, and Clarendon residents. They feel this is the best choice for their community, allowing the public to have a say on who will fill their seat on the board, which is their lawful right. Please stay tuned for more specifics. Any questions for the select board about this decision can be directed to their administrative assistant, Katie, via email or phone call. Questions regarding the election can be directed to the town clerk's office. 802-775-4274. Sincerely, Clarendon Select Board, Michael J. Klopshin. So that is the formal advice that they have submitted to us. Our legal responsibility is to appoint within 30 days. And we can now have a discussion on the candidates that have put their name in for the special election. I'm opening the floor.
Sure, I'll go first.
Okay.
This
Hi,
is
Len.
Lenny. I just want to make my statement clear. First of all, did the select board suggest one candidate or the other?
I specifically spoke to Mike this morning to get that information, whether they care. I mean, he said we would be satisfied. I would be satisfied with either of those candidates, and he declined to make a recommendation.
Okay.
He said either would serve the town of Clarendon.
And I would agree that either would work well for the town of Clarendon. I know both. I do want to make clear though that I will abstain from voting for either of the candidates. I feel, not that a lot of people are probably watching this, but I don't want to sway people to vote for one person or another. I want them, when the people of Clarendon go in on May 18th to vote, that they can do so with a clear conscience and without us, or me in particular, saying, well, I think this person would be better than that person. So just so you know, I will abstain from voting for either of them.
Thank you, Len. Liz?
Len brings up a really interesting point that I hadn't considered. Is there any way we can vote not publicly so that we're not swaying people, persuading people? Is that legal? Maria's shaking her head. Bruce is shaking his head. Okay.
Was that your question, Liz?
Yeah.
Okay, Matt?
I understand that we have a legal responsibility to fill the seat within 30 days. That being said, I don't think the state police are going to show up and haul us away in shackles for not filling the seat. It still kind of bothers me that this election is going to basically be decided by representatives that don't actually live within the town of Clarendon. And I don't think that that is fair to the residents of Clarendon. I do plan on voting one way or the other, but I just wanted to make it known on the record that I still do not believe that representatives that don't live in Clarendon should be voting for a representative from Clarendon.
Thank you, Matt. I talk to your legislature, because I think it'll be coming up. Bruce?
I think I watched the committee who met with Ken Fredette and Todd Fillmore, and the last words that the chair of that committee said was to defer to the select board, should strongly defer to the select board. And the select board hasn't made a decision. And so I, like Matt, I would prefer we break the law. They're going to change the law by the end of the session. I agree with Lynn too. I think if we put somebody in there, that's going to give them the heads up. Some people may just think they have it. I think we ought to just wait, should postpone it. It's 5 weeks. It's 2 board meetings. That's all.
PJ?
Mute. This board has been under so much scrutiny for living in gray area. I don't think we have the option to break the law. I don't think that is something we should even entertain talk about or anything, especially in an open public. We do have an obligation to do this as per the law. And something that I know when I first came on here as a district, I personally have to represent all the schools. So all of us as school board members should be representing every single school equally. And I know I have as much care for Clarendon and Shrewsbury as I do Wallingford. So I'm going to say, to fulfill our obligations and to comment on the two candidates, the way I looked at them is I thought Carol brought a lot of experience to the school board. I think she would be a candidate that would come in here knowing exactly what to do, would be able to fit really well with all the committees and things like that. Andrea, on the other hand, I think brings in the fact that she's not an educator. And when I look around the school board, myself included, we have a large representation of educators on the school board. So that would be a reason why I think Andrew would come in and bring a perspective that is newer to the board. I still haven't personally decided which way to go. So I would really like to hear some opinions from the other school board members, following the fact that I know we have to make a vote. We can't just let it go the way we, let it go to May. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you, BJ. Other comments? Doug, do you have a comment, or are you?
Oh, yeah, I have a comment.
Okay.
Being the third Clarendon individual on here, I don't agree with Len from his. I understand his situation, but I don't agree with him. I think if a board member makes a choice on a certain person, that will actually help in the taxpayers and the voters come up with something that, hey, this person thinks there, this person's been a board member for a while, he sees whatever it is for that person that's there. I know I wish I've changed in the last minute and a half. I had wished in my mind that we, as the three board members that were left from Clarendon, should have the vote and only the vote. But BJ came up with a really strong situation. We are here representing our town, but we are also here trying to deal with a set of schools that cover all four towns that are, we have to do everything in those. We don't signal them out doing one thing that Clarendon loves, but everybody else hates, but we're going to do it anyway. It's an open situation. I do have a choice, but I'll wait until we start doing that part of it to let everybody know. And I thank you very much.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute either. Thank you, Doug. Asha, did you put your hand up?
Oh, I did not. I'm sorry. I think I touched my face, but I did put my hand up. Thank you.
All right. Are there any other comments as part of this discussion? Seeing none, I guess we'll just, I'll just call names as I go across the screen, and you can give me your choice and I will keep track. Maria.
Carol.
Len.
Abstain.
Thank you. Still had to ask. Bruce.
Andrea.
Thank you, Bruce. Matt.
Andrea.
Thank you, Matt. Asha.
Carol.
Thank you, Doug. Doug.
Sorry about that. Sorry about the Andrea.
Okay. Thank you, Doug.
We got to get out of this computer stuff.
Sam.
Carol.
BJ?
Man, I haven't made up my mind yet.
Would you like us to skip you, BJ?
Yeah, I think I
Liz?
have to find a coin.
Okay, Liz?
Carol.
Thank you. I'll hold off on voting to see if it's necessary to break a tie. BJ, you're up.
I'm going to go with the two Clarendon members who voted and go with Andrea to support them.
Okay. You guys have put me in a really uncomfortable position. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 for Carol and 1, 2, 3, 4 for Andrea. Len, would you like to rethink your abstentions? Because I'd rather have a Clarendon person make this vote than me, because I will have to vote if you don't.
Sure. Can I legally change my abstention?
Well, we haven't finished voting yet, so yes.
Totaled them.
I mean,
I hate waffling. Andrea.
Okay. Okay. Andrea wins. All right, we've finished that. I did want to mention, as part of transacting other legal business, that I went to the Stafford Program Committee. This is very short, this morning, and Stafford has had a great, successful year of bringing kids into the program. They only have 16 slots open for the coming year, so I think they deserve a big hand on that. It was pretty impressive. Other than that, we have agenda building and upcoming comments that are on the agenda: late April student presentation and perhaps a June Mill River presentation. Dave, do we have anybody lined up for a late April student presentation? So I'm sure we'd all enjoy it.
Yeah, not quite yet. I had spoken with elementary principals who all had concerns about putting students in a virtual format in the evening and didn't think that would go very well. So my next step is to talk to Mill River. I'm thinking perhaps student government or another student leadership group might be good to hear from them, just their perspective on this year. And then that lines up with, I think the last meeting, Len had asked about maybe a presentation from Tyler and Jen about just the year in review at Mill River, what the remote versus in-person dynamic look like. So we'll plan on that if the board is okay with that approach.
Okay, so we'll leave it to you for late April. Somebody will.
We'll get somebody. Yes, you got it.
I'm assuming we do not need an executive session.
Could I?
Oh, I'm sorry, Len, go ahead.
No, that's fine. I'm sorry. At some point, I would like to revisit the student representative on the board.
Mm-hmm.
We've had them. Some participated a lot, some didn't, but I really think it's important that we get the student perspective on this board.
I agree. Hopefully, maybe when we start the new year, we can push that harder, because we've had some really successful student representatives, and I think in Zoom world, it was probably fighting a losing battle to try and it's hard enough for us to come, right? Other than that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, we have Doug, seconded by Samantha, and a wide range of people. Consensus? Raise your hand. Okay, good night.